Hi, folks. I'm Abel James, and welcome to the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food, real results. Today's special guest is Ori Hofmekler, a Renaissance man and the author of the best-selling Warrior Diet. Before we get to the show, I wanted to let you guys know that as a special thanks for us hitting #1 across the world in Canada, Australia, US, and a bunch of other countries, I'm offering 60% off my 30-day fat loss program at my website. You can go to fatburningman.com and enter your best email address, and I'll shoot it right over to you. You'll also get a free ebook for doing that. So if you're interested, head on over there. But let's talk about the show. Ori is an awesome guy, really interesting stuff, just packed with information in this show. So why don't we get right into it? We talk about why humans are nocturnal eaters at heart, how not eating food can improve your health and performance, what it's like to be a bona fide Renaissance man, and the critical difference between grass-fed and pastured dairy. All right, let's go hang out with Ori. All right, folks, today I'm very excited to be here with Ori Hofmekler, who's a fellow Renaissance man, and not only is he a world-renowned artist, but he's also the author of the groundbreaking Warrior Diet. And with a tagline like, "Not actively surviving is passively dying," this man is no joke. How's it going, Ori?
Very good here. Very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well myself. I love, I know the people who are listening to the audio can't see this, but there's a backdrop of this beautiful art that Ori created himself. What was the backstory of that for the listeners?
Well, actually, what you see here is part of the campaign that I did for Absolute Vodka, where I imitated. I learned special technique that can really imitate one-on-one masterpieces of artists from Rubens to Gauguin to Renoir,
Wow.
Van Gogh. Even, yeah, Vermeer was a hard because, it's a technique that most artists today cannot do. Anyway, campaign ran for 4 years. For 20 years, I made my living as a political artist. My art appeared in virtually every important magazine
Wow.
in the US and Europe, and even in Japan. But because I lost my peripheral vision in my left eye, I had to quit this career at a certain point. My eye got exhausted.
Yeah.
And that's where I took off and decided to write the Warrior Diet.
That's
Just,
amazing.
just on the last, in the year 2000, I was already the publisher of Mind and Master Power. It was a magazine in New York where I introduced my concept at that point.
Yeah.
I believe at that time I was the first one that introduced intermittent fasting, so it was not accepted very well, at that time.
You know,
But it got a lot of attention, and I really believed in it, so I decided to write the Warrior Diet.
yeah. Oh, that's so neat. And I remember reading the Warrior Diet, and it seemed, to most people, when they were writing about it or talking about it, it seemed completely extreme. And now it's very interesting. About a decade later, a lot of these things are starting to poke into the mainstream, aren't they? Like the ancestral approach to diet and fitness, as well as intermittent fasting.
Well, that's very interesting. There's something very interesting here that the public, it takes some time for the public, 15 or 20 years, to follow up on what science today recognize
Right.
as an interesting or new findings. When I wrote the Warrior Diet, there was already an evidence that humans, like animals, are programmed for a certain kind of a diet, a certain kind of a feeding cycle
Right.
that fit our species biology, that make us thrive, that make us live even longer. But the concept was controversial because it is anti-industrial.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, when you look at the details of what we humans are programmed for, it's going against what the industries tell you that you need.
That's right.
And we have been grown up for many, many years, too many years, to endorse comfort
Mm-hmm.
and laziness, more relaxation than action,
Right.
more material in many ways than spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically turn to like it very much, and in many ways, most people today are addicted to this lifestyle. But our biology is completely different. We did not survive, our species did not survive on this planet on that program that the industry tried to push us today. The truth is quite the opposite.
Yeah.
We evolved to survive under stress. We evolved to confront and thrive on stressors that people today don't like to even try to understand.
Yeah.
So the way that was written in a very simple concept, I wanted to introduce the concept of that I believe is the original human diet.
Mm-hmm.
And I also brought examples for some of what has been considered some of the most successful historical societies, including the ancient Greeks, the Spartans, and the Romans.
Right.
And surprisingly, this society lived very well on a diet similar to the warrior diet.
Mm-hmm. So just for the people who might not know out there, can you explain briefly what the warrior diet consists of?
The warrior diet consists of on intermittent fasting. You eat one main meal a day at night. My argument, the humans are nocturnal eaters. So our main meal is supposed to be at night. Our body, our nervous system is actually built for that.
Yeah.
It compensates us very well when we do it that way. During the day, humans have not evolved to eat much. In fact, large meals during the day contradict our biology. They suppress part of our nervous system, the sympathetic nerve, that make us alert and focus. In fact, when you look at the cycle of the human cycle of how we're supposed to thrive, there is a feeding cycle that encourages energy expenditure and fat burning during the day, and compensation, relaxation, and sleep at night. And when we interrupt this cycle, people start to gain weight, regardless to the diet that they follow, and they start to suffer from mental disorder, no joke, and sleeping disorder. So the feeding cycle was very important. And then I also discussed about the food chain that humans are supposed to live on. We evolved to thrive on a certain kind of food chain. Each species has its own food chain. You cannot feed a cat cucumbers, neither you try to feed a rabbit meat.
Right.
Both species would die on this, you understand?
Yeah.
But humans are being fed with food that does not fit our species.
Right.
So the book really explained many things. It covered a lot of issues, also from a historical perspective, but also it touched a lot, something which is very unclear today.
Right.
Unclear, Abel. Food combination. What kind of food combination have we evolved to thrive on? Is there any method behind this madness, or is it just a gimmick? I try to prove there is a very clear method behind food combination. And if you know how to combine food, if you know how to design your meal, you can practically or literally eat twice as much as calories still lean down, while getting fat on half the calories if your food combining is wrong.
Yeah. So what are some of the basic tenets of combining food in a healthy way?
It's a very good question. It's coming to one principle, and if I can reverse one step before, it will be easier to explain.
Okay.
My main focus today and before was human survival. Human survival should be your top priority. Everything else coming secondary. Your survival, the survival of your animal, of your family, friends, and even your animals should be your top priority. Again, everything else comes secondary. But in real life, in our society, survival is one of the most undetermined terms. Most people have no idea what is survival. They cannot even define it.
Yeah.
Call it staying alive. Staying alive is not surviving. It's just staying alive. There is a difference between hanging in there and thriving.
Right.
What I'm trying to say, when you look at human survival or mammal survival, Abel, do you know what is the number one most important pathway or insulin, a hormone in your body, I just answered, it's insulin.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The most important hormone in your body. If your insulin system is disrupted or shattered, your all survival chances are immediately going down.
Yeah.
So insulin dictates everything. It also dictates the viability of your sex hormone, testosterone. It dictates the viability of your growth factors, growth hormone. When your insulin is shattered, you are basically aging fast and you are prone to disease. You're basically prone to live a shorter lifespan.
Yeah.
Not just us, other mammals too. So the main purpose is also keep your insulin sensitive, insulin intact.
Mm-hmm.
Easy said than done. So the food combination that back to this question, the food combination that I offer really complement your insulin. They're combining in a way that you're not going to shatter your insulin like our typical diet does.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, I myself, I eliminated grain recently from my diet, virtually completely.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, even though I did experience a sudden weight loss, I never felt so energetic and so better than since I did it. And that including all grain. But for those who eat grain, which are more glycemic,
mm-hmm.
do not ever combine grain with sugar.
Yeah.
That's an example. The things that are universal combiners are those who are very low glycemic. It's protein and vegetables. Mm-hmm. Protein and vegetables, theoretically at least, can combine with everything. But anything else, do not. So when you see a trail mix of nuts and raisins, two healthy, allegedly healthy food, the mix is not working.
Yeah.
Fat and sugar is fatal to human health and other species' health. Mm-hmm. There is so many studies, exciting studies, that shows how bad this combination is. It's not just bad because it shatters your insulin system. It's not just bad because humans are not built for a mixed fuel of equal fat and sugar. It's just, we cannot utilize it. Yeah. It's subject by itself. It's also, it's amazing. This combo, fat sugar, like regular chocolate candy, bind to the same receptors as crack cocaine, make you addicted to this high palatability.
Yeah.
You want it more, and sorry for the lingo, you screw yourself more and more.
Yeah.
And what happened, it's probably one of the main causes of obesity and a shorter lifespan. Yet, this combo, fat and sugar, is one of the most abundant combo of the industry. Oh, yeah. You find it
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, not just from junk food. You find it in regular protein bars and, mm-hmm. And shakes. There's not enough awareness for food combination and human survival.
Yeah. That's
so
absolutely true.
Terms are not clear, people are just experimenting. Mm-hmm. They experiment with theory when the vision is unclear. It's very important to clear the vision. And I think that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Not just by myself, of course, but we are trying to do that.
Right.
There's another aspect, if you want to talk about. There's the aspect of longevity. It's not just survival, longevity. Do we really want to live long? Do we want to maximize our lifespan? Let's put the question in another world. Do we want to age slower?
Yeah.
Can we block in many ways the aging? What is our lifespan? The average lifespan for a lucky guy today is maybe 70, 75. Some very lucky people reach 80. And very, very, very lucky can cross it, okay?
Yeah.
And they manage to do it virtually living on drugs and support. Mm-hmm. Most people today over the age of 65, 70 are losing their virility. Really, the situation, life quality is actually decreases.
Right.
But practically, I'm writing about it now. Practically, it sounds incredible. People could live 150 years. We have the capacity, and maybe even more. We have the capacity to slow and maybe block and even reverse the aging process by understanding what are the processes that needs to be blocked and what are the processes that need to be,
Yeah.
encouraged. One of the most exciting new discoveries is about the effect of calorie restriction and intermittent fasting on the lifespan of mammal. It's not really even completely clear the mechanism about, but there is more and more exciting news to understand that the nutritional stress that is put on human or mammals can increase the lifespan sometime by over 50% and more.
Wow.
So how far can we go with this? How far can we explore the ability to stop the inevitable aging?
Right.
And this is not just a theoretical question. It really translates to everything that we do. Are we committed to do it right now? And what about our fitness? Fitness obviously is a good thing. It's a good thing to exercise, of course.
Sure.
But can it really increase our lifespan? That is very arguable. It's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, what do you think?
I'm thinking that exercise by itself is unconditionally beneficial if you know how to control it.
Yeah.
I wrote even a whole book about this recently. It's called Unlock Your Muscle Gene. And I think that as you age, your exercise should be more intense, actually, but shorter.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot talk about exercise alone. You need to look at the whole package of exercise and nutrition. So the big challenge is now, what are you exercising for?
Yeah.
Are you exercising in order to live longer, better quality of life? Or are you exercising to score? Maybe to have better numbers, maybe to get a legacy as a champion athlete. These are not the same.
Yeah.
These are two different concepts, completely different. And I personally find a lot of resistance. I introduced my concept, which is called control fatigue training. Mm-hmm. The video is out there. And the concept is very different. I do believe that each species should exercise according to the species' unique biological program. You cannot train a dog like a deer, and you cannot train a baby deer like a cat. Mm-hmm. Each species that has the human too. We're not exception. Only that our initial exercise program has been all but crushed.
Yeah.
We can talk maybe later on because it's a very interesting subject. Who are we? What kind of predators are we?
Right.
I mean, there is studies there too. And if somebody would train us like dog whisperer train dogs, they probably handle us better than all the modern fitness that we are facing today.
I really like that.
Yeah, well, it's the truth. But the package of nutrition and training needs to be re-examined. Yeah. Sport nutrition, as it has been up to now, in many ways, you ask me for my opinion, it's counter-effective.
Right.
In a sense. Let's talk about something simple like carb loading. Carb loading definitely serves a purpose, loading glycogen, and in the case of strength training, it definitely the preferred fuel for the fast to be muscle fiber. However, from biological point of view, this is a very limited view. Carb loading also shatter your insulin slowly and gradually. The more you load carb, the less sensitive your insulin will become.
Yeah.
So by the age of cross 50 or 60, you can see how your blood sugar gradually increase. Mm-hmm. The standard today is that blood sugar below 100 is still okay. But in real life, it's not okay. Because if your fasting blood sugar is 99, then every time after you eat a meal, you become diabetic, at least for a few hours. Not a good thing.
Right.
So how do we keep our blood sugar and insulin low as possible? One of the solutions, avoid carb loading. I know it's popular, avoid it. Yet there is a trade-off. Your performance tomorrow may be a bit slower because you didn't adapt to another fuel.
Yeah.
But if you train your body nutritionally, like you train your body physically, you may excel. It may take longer, but you may excel far and beyond.
Right. And you can do it for longer.
much longer. Abel, I don't know if you have you noticed what happened to so many athletes who look so great when they are in their season
Oh
and then
yeah.
they age so bad?
Right.
Athletes,
I mean, you look at like you were talking about before. Is your training for longevity or is it for performance? Because if you look at the longevity of even an average person who doesn't exercise, what is it, 65, 75, something like that. But if you look at the average lifespan of a professional football player, it's like 52,
right?
right?
Yeah. But beside the lifespan and the injury that they suffer, I mean, they don't, many of them do not age well. It's
Yeah,
just unfair. I look at boxers. This is one of the greatest sport ever. Many of them becoming obese
yeah.
and so weak. And it's not just the hit they got on the head, which is another subject. So I put in my way that a list of athletes who were champion of the world in track athletes, track and field athletes who became obese later on.
Yeah.
What is going on? Why are we getting so fat as we get older? Actually, many of us get fat before they get older,
Right.
but are we getting so fat and sluggish when we get older? So the solution where, people becoming less physically active, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. The answer is something is very wrong, not just with our typical diet, also with our fitness.
Yeah.
Our fitness is not that different from conventional diet or exercise. Our fitness is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So sedentary people, of course, would do worse than active individuals. There is no question. But why being the best among the worst? Why not excelling per se? Why not excelling? I'm trying to introduce now a new fitness concept. I'm trying to redefine the question of human fitness. I call it biological fitness. It's a fitness that allows a species to better survive, not just to excel. Ironically, Abel, you look at the ancient Greeks. I researched them a lot in
Yeah.
the ancient Roman. They were in much better shape than we are now.
Sure.
Especially they had a better, much more frugal lifestyle, more pristine and clean water. But there's some studies that really show that there's not even one single champion, Olympian power athletes, strength athletes, who can even score what a typical warship rower, ancient Greek warship rower, the guy who rowed the ship, could handle. This durability is impossible today.
Really? Why is
Yeah,
that?
partly because these people invested longer time on primitive fitness, not modern fitness. That means they have to confront and adapt to multiply stress. So while we try to isolate one at a time, we have modern fitness cash money on isolation. It's easier to understand. It's isolation on anything. Isolation of diet components, isolation of body parts by exercise. They're a machine that can fit you anything. While life is a complex one thing, we'll constantly try to separate the fractions and think that it's gonna offer us a solution. So I would say the ancient warrior fitness was wild. They engage in multiply factors. It's a do or die attitude that the human species evolved to strive and do better on that approach.
Yeah.
Our approach of modern fitness don't even have enough time to be tested. But the reason I'm telling you the story about the Greeks, in spite of being in such a great shape, look what happened to the first marathon runner.
Yeah.
He
Not
died.
pretty.
The first marathon, he died. What do we understand from this story? Maybe marathon running is not such a great sport.
Yeah.
Maybe long distance running is not exactly what help us better survive. We need to question a lot of things. But the most important thing, again, is our nutrition.
Yeah.
Abel, there is so much exciting information coming today. And I'd like to challenge virtually every detail. I know that, I understand you told me that you follow the paleo diet.
Yes. A
So,
version of paleo.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your version?
Sure. So it always starts with a great deal of plants, mostly non-starchy veggies, and animal food. So it could be eggs, it could be steak, chicken, fish, that sort of thing. But always from the highest quality animal, the healthiest animal that was fed and raised wild, or exactly the way that nature dictates it should be, in the true sense of the word, not just natural, in marketing speak, but actually natural. So starting there and focusing more, like you said, on the quality of the food as opposed to the quantity of the food, or the amount of calories in something, or even the amount of protein or fat in something. It's focusing on prioritizing real high quality food first, and then you can kind of experiment with some of the details. But it's really more of a holistic approach than one that's isolating certain foods down to the particular substances within them.
And I'm trying to understand. So the quality animal, are you talking about free range animals?
Yes.
Like grass-fed or free range animals that are freely roaming, and that's a very interesting point.
Right.
They,
So animals that are as healthy as they possibly could be. You're putting them in your body. It's becoming part of you. So as far back in the food chain as you can go, you should be eating healthy food.
I think the animal part is very important because, and I agree with you, the free range animal is your last option, is the only option
Right.
here. What many people fail to understand that there is a huge difference between the fat that you get from an animal,
Right.
a flesh animal, and the fat that you get from other sources. For instance, dairy fat, even though mostly saturated, is a neutral fat. It doesn't have any clear or inherent bioactive activity.
Mm-hmm.
The fat that's coming from meat is a different story. It's similar to the fat that we carry in our body. It has bioactive properties.
Right.
Bioactive properties, that means it can give a signal to your body, like your own fat, that can be either to gain fat or lose fat, honestly.
Right.
It's done through some kind of hormone that the fat tissue, especially in the belly, secrete.
Mm-hmm.
They are called cytokine. So the belly fat can secrete pro-inflammatory, mostly cytokine like TNF alpha, interleukin 6, and
Right.
these cytokines have very unique property. They cause insulin resistance, which we don't want, and they give a signal to the fat. They inhibit fat burning, basically. They give a signal to the fat to keep itself. But also fat can produce anti-inflammatory cytokine, and so is the muscle, that actually promote fat burning,
Right.
and promote the fat to be actually more bioactively melting down and releasing.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the animal that you eat, that's the kind of signal you're going to get when you eat an animal, typical animal from overfed or stressed farm animal. Most likely the fat that you get from the animal will give you an inflammatory signal to hold fat.
Mm-hmm.
And if you eat an animal that is healthy, active, and free range, most likely you get a better signal. How better, we don't know, because the meat that we eat today definitely doesn't fit the wild animals that were eaten by. But there's another subject. I'm just interested, so I'm trying to hear what you say. Why don't you eat legumes? What's wrong with legumes?
So occasionally I will eat legumes. I'm not the paleo police, as some people like to say. So I'm not 100% strict all the time. But I don't generally make legumes a staple because I don't think they taste quite as good as a lot of the other foods that I eat. There's nothing better than fresh fruits or veggies from a tree or a garden that were recently alive and well. I really like fresh meats as well. They just taste amazing to me, as opposed to wheat or something like that, which doesn't taste great, and also it's not that great for you. So there are things that I've always liked, especially when I was a kid. A lot of the listeners know this, that one of my My kryptonite, I guess you could say, is like tortilla chips or salty, fatty, crunchy chips or crackers and things like that.
Okay.
So occasionally I'll indulge in like bean chips or sometimes, God forbid, corn chips or something like that. But I don't make it a staple because I know that there are better foods to eat, and I don't find them, if they're prepared in a healthy way anyway, without all that extra junky salt and fat, I don't find them quite as palatable as the foods that I do make staples, the plants and animal foods.
What about nuts and seeds? Do you eat nuts? Do you like nuts?
I love eating nuts and seeds as well, but I try not to eat too much of them.
Why?
Well, I think one of the things that really helps me is try to bring it back to what this would have looked like in nature. So if you have macadamia nuts, a lot of people haven't seen those with a shell on them, right? And it's if you buy them from the store, it's very easy just to choke down a whole handful or 2 handfuls or 3 because they're delicious and you can just pop them right in your mouth. But if you get them in the wild and you actually have to crack them open, it's going to be very difficult to just put down fistfuls, right? You're going to probably eat a few of them, keep a few for later because they're very valuable, nutritious food. And
less perishable, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so I tend to eat most foods in moderation and spread them out as much as I can to get as many nutrients from different sources as I can, because I do believe that the body functions best when it's getting small amounts of a lot of different things as opposed to huge amounts of very few things, which unfortunately that's kind of the way that the industrialized system of eating is the way that it exists today, is we're eating huge amounts of corn and industrial seed oils and other things like that really don't have a great place in the original human diet. And I think you'll probably agree with that.
Well, I agree with you in many ways with your approach, but I definitely agree that the current industry and conventional fitness or conventional, even mainstream nutrition do not recognize the problem of combining fat and sugar together or fat and carbs together. The human body has not evolved for this combination. Yeah, you can combine them, but not equally. One of them has to be a primary fuel and the other one secondary. Right. Meaning, when you look at your muscle tissue, which is the largest energy consuming organ, every time that you put carbohydrate fuel, you inhibit the fat fueling and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Every time you put fat fuel, you inhibit carbohydrate fuel. But when you look at the evolution of the fuels, it's interesting both on the human body and the mammal species. There's something the scientists call the metabolic shift. And as you get advanced, athletically advanced, and as you move into intermittent fasting, your body is actually becoming more and more efficient in utilizing fat fuel, not so much carbohydrate fuel.
Right.
We have a lot of mechanisms that help us and encourage us to get efficient in fat fueling, not in carbohydrate fuel. In fact, if you train your body too much to eat carbohydrate, you actually become less and less efficient because you shatter your insulin. But the opposite happened with fat fueling. So shifting to fat fueling has a huge advantage. Some scientists, like Clifford Joly, for instance, wrote a very interesting article, very controversial. It's called The Seed Eaters. Should be called the Nuts Eaters. He tried to prove, and in many ways did a great job, in my opinion, that the early human staple food was nuts and seeds. Mm-hmm. When you look at the human skull, we are predator. And I'm saying it to all the paleo people. Yes, we are predator, we can eat meat. And we can kill. And we can even digest meat. But as predator, we are in the end of the line. Mm-hmm. When God selected all the predators, they say, okay, human, we'll let you be predator, but you're going to be in the end of the line.
We're no tigers.
No, we're not. We are not even, look at your cat or dog, we are far away from there.
Right.
We have some advantages, but a lot of disadvantages. So let me just touch it basically.
Yeah.
What happened, the homini, our ancestors, had different structure that we do. They were smaller. They have a smaller brain box, a larger anterior teeth, and the jaw was much larger. The forehead was smaller. You can see it on the skulls of Lucy, for instance.
Sure.
As we evolve, as we have two gene mutations that increase our brain, there was a similar reduction of the jaw size and a special reduction of the interior teeth. And you can see it mostly on the canines. We basically lost our canines. Mm-hmm. So what does it mean? We lost the capacity to tear meat with our teeth, like others primate can do, like baboons, for instance. And we also develop with a small jaw, very interesting. We have the only predator in the world that developed this unique cheek teeth with a flat tail. Our cheek teeth have a flat tail. And when you look how it built to chew hard, small, oval-shaped objects, mm-hmm. Hence nuts and seeds. Now, when we look early back on the human habitat, what do we find it? It was open grassland mm-hmm. and open woodland. In open grassland, you can find all the seeds, almost like what the cow is now raised cow mm-hmm. is finding. A lot of grasses, seasonal cereal grains, mostly in vegetative state mm-hmm. that can be eaten at that point, because grain cannot be eaten unless you roast it or cook it, right. Bake it. And so is early legumes in its vegetable state. On the woodland, you can find nuts and seeds, some fruits. We evolved as human in both mm-hmm. grassland and open woodland. Only that. Nuts and seeds have one advantage over what you find in the open grassland. They are less perishable. Mm-hmm. Even though they have a hard shell, with stones, there's evidence that human could break them. Right. There's evidence for over 1.5 million years ago of dust of legumes that were already used as a source of protein. Protein was a serious issue until the past 300 years. Protein was an issue. I did massive research even on military and strategic and logistics of different kind of civilization, including in the Roman Empire, which was so rich. Getting protein was an issue. Yeah. They even wrote how to shift between barley and corn to create certain kind of breads that have more protein. They were aware of that. So I'm sure that it's obvious that the early humans had to deal with enough source of protein. Mm-hmm. From all the grasses, the best source, including for cows and for humans, is obviously legumes. But nuts and seeds are by far a better source. Mm-hmm. But the difference with nuts and seeds that could be preserved for at least a year, if not more. So they are non-perishable and they fit logistically. If a human can carry it, they were nomads, they can carry it with them with less fear of spoilage. Right. There's also an evidence that human could eat milk of other species, not product, drink milk. And there's evidence that milk or colostrum is not even species specific. When you look, Abel, on the myth of Romulus and Remus, being breastfed by the she-wolf, yeah, it's not just a myth. It's at least literally possible that a baby can be raised by the milk of another animal, whether it's a goat or a she-wolf or even a cow. Yeah. So that's a very interesting concept. I know that you told me you're on dairy. But my point is this. I wrote about if you know how to separate between the fat and the carb fuel, like you decide I'm going to have a fat fuel day or whatever, and if you design your meal properly, you don't even need to think twice about the amount of nuts that you eat. Yeah, you'll be surprised how your calorie suddenly jump by 100% higher, and you're still leaning down. Yeah, there's something about nuts that I don't think there's a label in the world that can accommodate how many nutrients and components. The industry tried to impress you with a lot of labels. Right. But you can create labels out of the floor that I'm standing right on. Yeah. This table have a nutritional label,
Yeah.
minerals and this. So the layman does not know. But honestly and seriously, nuts are very rich. And I do believe that when you look at the human skull and how we evolved to be,
Yeah.
actually more gatherers than hunters.
Using that
It was,
framework, that's very
yeah.
interesting. So Ori, what nuts and seeds do you prioritize? Is there a hierarchy? Some that are great and some that aren't so great? Which ones are better?
The one which are most alkaline will always be better. And the one with the less fat and the high protein obviously will be easier to digest.
Uh-huh.
So in my opinion, on the top three, almonds coming first, cashews or pistachios coming second, cashew coming third, fluctuating. Almond oil. Pecan, walnuts, very high in fat. I wouldn't recommend going over the board with this. And so is macadamia. Very good nut, too much fat. I don't think you can sour it too long. I mean, there is a theory today, partly true, that a very, very high fat diet promote ketogenesis, which is a huge advantage,
Sure.
and it minimizes the effect on insulin very respectfully. But it may be too much of a trade-off with your ability to exercise. People on extremely high fat diet do not get enough protein in the diet. In fact, they say, I mean, you're aware of the theory that protein can age you too because protein activates the mTOR,
Right.
which by the aging process. I really seriously argue this concept. It's partly true, but I really argue how far protein can really drive the aging process.
Yeah.
And that's a subject maybe one day we can talk just about that. It's
I
very,
would love to.
but there's a trade-off here. Well, that's what I'm trying to say. There's a trade-off.
Right.
So if you're like doing your music and interview, you're very active, okay, and then you go to train, you burn a lot of energy. The training really takes your muscle tissue too. You need sufficient amount of protein to compensate. And you want to do it, this is the art of living, without compromising your insulin and without aging. So I believe that exercise itself is the main factor. Exercise itself is important. It contributes for you, this anti-aging regimen. Giving up on exercise just because, or adequately, just because you're on a high-fat diet, in my opinion, would be a mistake.
Yeah.
And doing exercise like gardening or walking around the block is just not good enough. You need to exercise intensely.
Right.
So I do believe that when you combine, let me put it like this. Sometimes I feel I'm talking too much. But when you look, the studies on longevity do not combine all the factors together. There is a problem here. They do fasting, they do calorie restriction, and then they do intermittent fasting, but they don't combine it with exercise. Most of the animals that we study are done in lab conditions. Lab conditions are very indulging. I don't know if you're aware, but animals are being treated with a very good, healthy diet, nutrient-rich, with vitamins and everything, arguably healthy. But these species have not evolved to survive this way. Neither did we. We evolved again in a very rough, we evolved to survive in a very rugged world, this primordial world, full of complex stressors that involved the changing climate condition, droughts, lack of accessibility of food, different kind of food. And we needed to be able to survive. We needed to do survival activities, which at time were very demanding. And all these complexes that I just mentioned is only a tip of the ice.
Yeah.
And this was not studied. What studies are fragments. Not that I'm canceling the study, I'm just saying it's a factor that is missing.
Yeah.
So what really age us, we start to get clues now. We know what could age us. But there are also trade-offs that we need to be careful of. You know, we need to really be careful. So I do believe in many ways that in the approach of going back in time and see what does the evolution of humans shows us.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It also, so again, I'm not against legumes. I think that's make me different than the paleo.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not against legumes because I do think it was part of the early human diet.
I do agree that legumes must be cooked. It's not, should never be eaten raw.
Right.
Even sprouted legumes should be taken carefully
Right.
because they have enzyme inhibitors. You want to get rid of this. Grains, even though I eliminate the grains from my diet, I do think that grains must be cooked, shouldn't be eaten raw. Sprouted grain, maybe so.
Mm-hmm.
But again, all of them are too glycemic to my taste right now.
Right.
And interestingly enough, I heard it from you. Did you acquire a second taste after you switched to this diet?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Your palate
You lost
completely
taste.
changes.
How long did it take you to acquire this taste?
Let's see. You know, honestly, I think as soon as you cut out all of that junk, modern foods, you stop eating out quite as much, you get rid of food that comes in boxes. I think it only takes a few weeks for you to have it. You start to notice, and some people, it's even a few days, they start to notice that they can actually taste vegetables and they can taste the nuance in food.
And
the
they
subtle
even
flavors.
eat vegetables.
Yeah. And sometimes you even start liking vegetables. What a novel concept, right?
Yeah, yeah. So how long do you think it takes this switch to happen?
I think it starts after a few days for most people. That's when you can first notice it, but it takes a few months for you to really start getting there, for the change to really happen.
You were never very overweight, have you?
So I was probably about 20 to 30 pounds overweight, but that was going up quickly.
But you were not like obese.
No, I was not obese.
Okay. What happened now? Well, good for you, of course.
Thank you.
What happened is that certain people reach such a level of addiction, it's eventually reached the brain.
Right.
It's very difficult for them to describe the switch that you just described, which was relatively easy for you. For many people, it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
There is a problem with the way their brains see food and see the whole world.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned before there are certain kind of opioid receptors that can dominate your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And certain food hit hard these opioid receptors, including wheat, for instance, sugar, combination of sugar and fat. So the addiction is very similar to crack cocaine. People get addicted to it.
Yeah.
It gives them a temporary feeling of good. But what most people fail to understand, that when you let your body be dominated by this hunger, it's called not just about this hunger hormone that give you the desire to keep eating.
Yeah.
It changes your whole metabolism. There is more and more evidence that there's almost a clash between two kind of neurotransmitters or hormone in your brain, hunger promoting and satiety promoting. If you're under the dominance of the hunger, you constantly crave to eat and eat more. And in fact, your body metabolism slow down and has almost the affinity to gain fat. It's a feed-forward mechanism, very bad one.
Yeah.
Very hard to do the switch. If, however, you manage to switch to satiety-promoting hormone, it's exactly the opposite. It's amazing. Your metabolic rate go up. You find it easy to lean down, and you can reverse a lot of obesity-related diseases. In fact, fat gain and fat loss have a very similar rule. Fat gain is almost like an inflammatory process.
Yeah.
It's encouraged by inflammatory hormones, and it tries to keep itself. It's a feed-forward mechanism. If you don't do an effort to stop it, you will suffer the consequences. And fat loss, not weight, fat loss is the opposite. It's anti-inflammatory. It's show again and again to restore a lot of problems that no drugs can even restore.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting concept that you really sometimes need to take time, weeks, not just days, weeks, to train your body for the right feeding.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, I went from being famished all of the time. I was just that guy who was constantly hungry to now I can go easily a full day without food and it's not a big deal. And I still have a very healthy appetite. I eat a lot, but I don't have to. And I think that's the biggest difference. It's not
What's
controlling
your
me.
energy level? How is your energy level when you fast?
I find that my energy level is great, and then I reach a point where I feel like I'm running out of gas. And if I keep going past that, then it goes away. But
It's interesting.
yeah, it is very interesting. It kind of goes in waves, but you can, especially once you're fat adapted, you can go a lot longer than you think you can. At least a lot longer than the commercials and TV shows would tell you that you can.
But this, what you describe, is something I call this, again, a shift. It's a metabolic shift. And it's a problem it's an issue that athletes to be aware of. You can do all the carb fuel in the world that you can do, but you're putting yourself at risk of hitting the wall.
Yeah.
Have you trained yourself on another fuel, fat or even protein fuel? That's another subject.
Right.
Most likely you're not going to hit the wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. Whey protein, for example, is one of the best food. I promote whey not because we produce, I believe, the best whey, but that's not the only reason. The science behind whey is phenomenal.
Yeah.
One of the things that we discussed before is this anti-inflammatory advantage of food. You really want to choose food that is anti-inflammatory from the same reason that we discussed. Whey have amazing anti-inflammatory properties. Remember we talked about pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokine.
Yeah.
Well, one of the most important cytokine, anti-inflammatory, the muscle producer called interleukin-15. I call this the fitness interleukin. Mm-hmm. It actually unconditioned, not just anti-inflammatory. It promotes fat loss, muscular development. It actually resynthesizes, promotes insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful cytokine. And guess what promotes it?
Right.
Two nutrients and a combination even better, calcium and the amino acid leucine. Mm-hmm. And rather as a naturally occur in the food. So the highest source of this combined together is whey protein. There is no food in the world that's higher source than that.
Yeah.
Meat is lagging far behind, chicken too, fish too, and even eggs. So I believe that people should be aware of the properties and the goals. Whey protein, on my experience, I personally use it as the ideal protein meal during the day. Yeah. Not just it tastes good. It's so fast assimilating. Give me all the properties that I want, and I feel it.
Yeah.
It's one more property. It is one of the greatest sources of muscle fuel without raising insulin, hardly.
Yeah.
There's a pathway in the body, it's called the alanine glucose shuttle, that sends exactly the amount of glucose that your muscle need or organ need. Not more, no less. Don't overspike your insulin, just do the job. And whey protein is the great supply, natural supply of branched-chain amino acid and leucine to do the job. So instead of popping millions of pills and calculating sport nutrition, what the athlete need, just be on the routine. Take whey protein, good quality whey protein.
You know what's funny, Ori, is a few weeks ago I ran out of the protein that I usually get, and I saw Warrior Whey, and I looked at it and I'm just like, cold processed, down to natured, grass-fed cows. Wow, this is really good stuff. And I got it. I even had some today. I didn't even realize that it was yours. I thought that was so neat. And then I saw when I had my assistant get your bio that's actually yours, and I thought that was so neat.
Well, it's actually a pasture-raised. There's an issue, honestly, deserves discussion by itself. Mm-hmm. What is grass-fed and pasture-raised? Let me just give you quickly.
Sure.
Because I'm writing about it now.
Oh, cool.
Grass-fed is a very strict policy. Even by U.S. regulation, it's strict policy when animals are being forced to eat either grass or forage, which can include forms like legumes or brassica in the early stage, okay. Or cereal grain in the pre-grain vegetative state. That kind of feeding have shown to decrease milk consumption dramatically up to 50% and more. The cows are basically very skinny. So what happened, the farmers, and there is much more, but the farmers, if you look at the industry, the grass industry is much more geared towards slaughtering rather than raising.
I see.
The pasture-raised is a different story. Pasture-raised really mimic what happened tens, thousand, maybe 100,000, maybe 1,000,000 years ago, when grass-fed animals were free range on the pasture, eating whatever they found. There is no restriction. So the mixed food on the pasture, as we believe, as nature created, is much more, give you much more nutrient, like you like to enrich your diet with different variety of raw food or of natural food. It gives you a larger, definitely more protein. It, unlike the grass-fed, which really suffer from often from impaired growth, okay, the pasture-raised don't have this problem. So they yield, in my opinion, sweeter milk, better milk, but they are still free range. These are not overfed animals.
Yeah.
They still struggle to get their food. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, I appreciate that distinction.
So, and if you look at the US regulation of grass-fed, they still allow confinement for half of their life.
Yeah.
The animals can still be in confinement. So when you say 100% grass-fed, that doesn't mean they're 100% grazing. Don't misunderstand it.
Right. It's tricky.
It could be that most of their life, the animals still feed hay in confinement. When you look at the pasture-raised, which is not a legal term, but it still has strict regulation. It's done by voluntary, by a farmer, or mostly organic, small family farm, who have their own regulation. They really care about the health of the animals.
Yeah.
They definitely care about the milk. Most of them produce cheese, you know, many of them produce cheese, so it has to taste good. But they also care about the land, not just humanely raised animal. They care about the land, it's a rotational grazing, and the quality of the water.
Right.
So definitely distinction. But the last fact is this. Grass-fed, by US regulation, allow hormonal treatment. So the animal can still be treated with hormone. When you look at pasture-raised, there's no pasture-raised, but if you look in fact, check all these pasture-raised farms, they don't use hormone, they don't use antibiotics, they don't believe in it.
Right.
So I just want to put the record straight a little bit. That doesn't mean that the grass-fed beef that you eat is bad. It's not bad. Just know the facts.
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting. Well, Ori, we're just about out of time. I actually have to, you'll appreciate this. I'm going to training for Krav Maga. I've been doing that recently on weeknights.
Oh, good for you, man. Who is your trainer?
I have a number of trainers, but it's Fit and Fearless is the name of the place. And I know there's one out in LA. I'm here in Austin, Texas, and it's just a couple miles from my house. So I really enjoy it. It goes along with that survivalist nature thing.
Yeah. I believe that my training system in many ways is influenced by that because I was practicing it in the past. But I got some good friends here in LA who are some of the cornerstones of Krav Maga. If you ever come here, I'll be happy to introduce you to them.
Oh, wow. That sounds amazing. I'm sure I'll wake up on the floor after meeting some of those guys. Well, Ori, thank you so much for coming on. You're welcome anytime. I would love to continue this conversation. So many things to talk about.
Same here. Thank you. Thank you, Abel. Bye.